Welcome to your Healing Place podcast with Linda and Mindy. It is our desire to address common concerns of how abortion and faith intersect in order to validate the emotional pain and grief that abortion can bring and give hope that recovery is possible. What I'd like for us to talk about is the fear that precedes an abortion and just what that looks like in our lives. Because I know you and I both have talked to many women over the course of the years, and there's fear is very common in all of us. It looks different, but the emotion itself is common. And so I'd kind of like to talk about that a little bit. What kind
They
of
say that
fears? Go
fear is
ahead.
one of the most powerful emotions there is as well. It is hugely motivating. It motivates most of what we do, I've heard said.
That's interesting. Well, it's definitely a good emotion. I mean, we ought to fear if we're near an alligator or a grizzly bear, or a rattlesnake, or a perpetrator, we ought to have fear. But sometimes fear can overwhelm us and not be, I guess I kind of think of fear as this big, thick forest, especially when it comes to finding out you're pregnant and you weren't intending to be pregnant, right? It's this big, thick forest and you think you'll never find your way through it. But the reality is whether you have that child or you have an abortion and you're looking, your perspective shifts and you're looking back, fear was just a very thin line of trees that just looked thick,
Hmm.
you know,
And you,
it,
and you can't see beyond it. That's all
you
you
can't,
can see are those
yes,
trees.
yes. And
Mm-hmm.
you think it's going to be, a scary way through. And I kind of, maybe this other picture comes to my mind, I'm thinking of the movie, The Lord of the Rings, where they walk into, is it Vanguard? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's the forest where the trees are talking and
Ooh,
they move and
evil. Yes.
yeah, the creepy forest. Yeah, that one. Anyway, so fear before, for me, because I had three abortions, each one of them had fear involved before, and to be quite honest, my abortions were in the 90s, last, I think maybe they all were in the 90s. Um, and I grew up with this, I didn't grow up in church, but I grew up with this sense of understanding. Somewhere I got this, I'm not sure where this even came from, that you're not supposed to have sex before marriage. I don't know if it was still cultural in the 80s. I know it was rampant, but that mindset, I don't know if it was still sort of a cultural mindset. Then I know that's shifting and that's going away. But so for me, that was kind of the biggest fears. I didn't want people to know I was sleeping around, and being pregnant is the greatest indicator, right? If I don't have a
Mm.
boyfriend, I didn't just miraculously get pregnant. And so, and that was fear. I didn't want my reputation damaged or stained. I didn't want people talking about me. I didn't want people judging me, all these things. And, yeah, they may have done that anyway, had I had those children. But there would have been a bigger reward and as far as commendation for raising those children well, had I done it. And anyway, um, yeah. But so fear is what kind of took me into the abortion center.
Right. And often fear is just paralyzing. It just makes it um, impossible. You got your fight or your flight reactions to fear. Either you're going to fight or you're going to flee and run away from it. I know for me, my initial reaction with the fear as a college student was to um, flee. I
Mm.
just totally denied for about 2 or 3 months. That's why I ended up with a late term abortion because I just denied it and refused to deal with it, and that fear just paralyzed me from making a decision and doing anything about it. Um, and I think fear can also be a fear of change.
Hmm.
It's not just the bad stuff; it's the unknown.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
fear that
100%.
unknown. Yeah,
How is this going to look?
yeah, we are,
Hmm.
of course, I feared what others would say, what my parents would say, But I think
Mhm.
another aspect of fear was just change, not knowing what it was going to be like. Am I going to have to drop out of school?
Mhm.
What is it going to be? My relationship with this man. I think that can be a huge fear for a lot of
Mhm.
women, is
Yeah.
especially if they're in an unhealthy relationship, somebody they don't want to parent their child.
Mhm.
That could be a huge fear, is being linked with that guy forever.
Yep.
And I know I've talked to many, many women along that line. So it's
Mhm.
just that unknown, I think, is one of the big fears of what it's going to be like.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were saying something and something came to mind and I'm getting my pen and paper out now because I'm writing it down next time because it flittered away and I'm hoping it'll come back. But yes, absolutely. Fear also makes you feel rushed
Yeah,
because you want to get out from under. If you fear something and there's a potential solution, our immediate, if we feel like we're in danger, which we're being told now that pregnancy is danger, all these things are dangerous, and or that we need to get out of this situation as quickly as possible and get back to, the status quo as quickly as possible. And so we can feel like if we see a potential solution, that we got to run into that, headlong into that really fast and just do this really quick. And then of course, some girls are told if they don't do it soon, it'll become late and
right.
all
The
this
abortion
stuff.
clinics really prey on that for sure.
Yeah.
You've got to do this right now.
Yeah. So what I didn't realize at the time of my abortions, and I didn't have anybody speaking any kind of truth into my life. I think there's a lot more voices out there today, was that I had time.
Mm,
I had time to investigate and research and see what my options were. Options meaning, making an adoption plan, which sounds awfully hard to do, but it's a life-giving solution versus a life-taking solution. How I could parent, what are the options? How I could parent. I didn't look into any of those. And so fear makes us feel like we have to run to something to get released from whatever that pressure is or that fear or that danger is. And not to say that those things aren't very real. Obviously, like you said, sometimes the relationships are so abusive and so toxic. The fear of being stuck there is very, very real. And we don't want to negate that.
in the
God,
Bible,
yeah.
it, fear is mentioned a lot. And
Hmm.
what the first thing the angels say when they show up with somebody is, fear not.
Hmm.
And because there is somebody bigger, there
Hmm.
is somebody that's watching out for us. There is a God that knows the way and can make a way. And so often the things that we fear aren't really truth. They're lies of
Right.
the enemy.
Right.
That everybody's going to hate me, that my life is over,
Yeah.
all those things are absolute lies that fear is based on.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, if we take time to really walk it through and do
Hmm.
the research, we
Hmm.
find out that sometimes the thing we fear wasn't even real.
Yeah. Yeah. If we can find somebody who will love us enough to walk us through some of those things and just look at everything, you know, in its entirety. Um, you know, I was thinking of the verse, perfect love casts out fear.
Mm-hmm.
It takes fear and it removes it from the equation and allows you to think rationally because fear overcomes your ability to rationally think sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a very scary place to be. I remember being
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was inspired by the many conversations had through the years with women struggling from the emotional pain associated with abortion. Thank you for allowing us into your healing journey. Subscribe on major platforms where podcasts can be heard. Learn more about virtual abortion recovery healing at www.anevenplace.com. The link is in the show notes.